We have a special episode of Claris Talk AI. I've got Gabriel Woodger. Welcome, sir.
Hey, good to be on the podcast.
You and I met at a conference in Rome, I think last year.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Rome.
I'm going to that conference again, and also Berlin. What are you going to this year?
Yeah, I'm hoping to make it to either one or both of those. It was yeah, FM Rome was kind of my first ever sort of FileMaker conference experience, which for someone who's done FileMaker maybe as long as I have,
Yeah.
it's maybe slightly unusual to not to have been able to make one previously. So
No, it's actually pretty common, I think. I think there's a lot of people in the same boat as you. So I invited you on because really for two things. One, you have an AI solution in production that I'm super curious about. And two, when met you, you and I nerded out really heavily about JSON, which is one of my favorite things.
yeah.
And you have an insanely cool use of JSON that I wanted to get into a little bit.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I definitely get can get into the weeds with Jason and all the fun stuff you can kind of do with it. So
Let's start with your AI stuff though.
yeah, so I suppose a little bit of background about what I sort of do. So
Hmm.
I'm sort of co-founder of a small sort of FileMaker development shop, and we have a vertical market solution which is for kitchen manufacturers. So it's a kind of quite a big system that covers everything from clients, CRM, through to a product catalog of
Hmm.
different different kind of kitchen cabinets and bits and pieces. And we do sort of 3D visualization. We do exporting to CNC as well as all the kind of manufacture processes and finance and accounting and all that kind of sort of standard ERP stuff. So it's quite a big solution we've sort of been doing for a number of years. So
Yeah, so that's kind of that part of it sounds like kind of a regular FileMaker solution. But the other thing that you have, which I think is not usual, is the 3D visualization part. You can build a whole kitchen with hundreds of components and visualize it all the way down to the screw.
yeah.
And all of that is is stored in a JSON object, re-renderable when changes are made to the order and visible inside FileMaker.
Yeah, absolutely. So our whole thing is about like what we would call like parametrically sized cabinets. So rather than it's being just always being exactly the same size,
Hmm.
a kitchen tends to need to have things which are custom sized so that things fit in. So as a
Hmm.
result, we don't really store the size of everything. What we
Hmm.
store is a calculation, and everything is kind of refreshed, kind of from there. So as you
Hmm.
create it on the fly, there's probably per product, there's probably thousands of calculations that have to happen to work out what the resulting size of that is, because everything is kind of dynamic. So yeah, I mean
Oh, so like, so if you've got like a space that's a X wide and you've got four cabinets that have to fit in there, um, and then the customer changes it and they want five, it has to measure the whole exact width, which might be like 2.62 meters, and then redo the math to figure out, yeah, that kind of stuff.
yeah, absolutely. So you might say yeah. So in woodwork outside of the US, everything is millimeters. So we're yeah kind of down to the millimeter. But yeah,
Hmm.
everything needs to be dynamically sized, which makes things a lot more complex, and it makes FileMaker a really great kind of tool. So yeah,
Yep.
I can quickly give a little sort of demo if people want to see people who are on YouTube. I can sort of give a quick. Sort of visualization as it might kind of help explain what's sort of happening. So,
Yeah.
yeah, this is our system. Um, Nice image made by Dali here, which is might get into the AI conversation later, but I asked for a nice visualization of a piece of software for kitchen designers, and it managed to bring all these bits and pieces kind of together. So,
Yeah. Screen sharing stopped there.
oh, are we on there? Can you see?
I can't right now.
You can't.
It
Oh,
started and
okay.
then it stopped, I think. So people who
Let
are
me.
listening to the podcast, you can go to YouTube and search for Claris Talk AI and you should find it
Yeah,
and
let me
subscribe.
try sharing that.
There we go. I see it.
There we go. Okay. So yeah, this is the sort of dash. This is the dashboard kind of the site. So yeah, here's a nice AI generated image.
Hmm.
So I'm going to go into my catalog. I'm going to have a look at a particular product. So here, this is maybe an 870 millimeter wide sort of floor cabinet. So my kind of cabinet visualizer, I'm just going to open it up in here, and this is all sort of in
Wow.
real time.
Yeah, so like
So
a
this,
fraction of a second it loaded, and now you're dragging it around in real time,
yeah,
like,
so this
yeah.
is this is kind of loading, and actually what we can see each of these elements is you can see a little 3D view. So this is a web viewer
Hmm.
inside of a FileMaker Windows. These fields and buttons at the top are all FileMaker, at the bottom here, and everything kind of inside of this box in the middle is all drawn in a web viewer, sort of done
Right,
in a way that the user can't really tell.
right.
But what we might see is we might see something like this panel on the side here. If we click this, this is driven by some calculations. So this is the height of the product, and then it's a kind of a calculated width.
Right.
So actually,
So the web viewer pops up a regular FileMaker card window kind of thing.
yeah. So the window in here, this is our FileMaker. These are
Yep.
portals and fields and bits and pieces we might be kind of expected to. But
Hmm.
obviously, inside of here is all an entire kind of 3D view. And we can,
Yeah.
as you might in a sort of 3D application, you can turn off different bits and pieces. We can kind of rotate the model.
Sweet.
But what we can actually do in here is if we look at the width, let's say we wanted to make this narrower, we'll change this to 500.
Hmm.
So this is now going to think, maybe a second and a half. And we
Wow.
can see here
Yeah, that's
now,
fast.
the
Yeah,
doors are
so
smaller.
yep.
These have kind of these are kind of resized. We've got some elements in here which are just boxes effectively. That's going to be a piece of wood, and some things like a kind of like the handle in here. You can see the kind of handles in here. They're
Yeah.
actually a 3D model which is brought in and loaded into the model.
So how
So
much JSON is this?
this is probably, if we look at the total JSON, it's probably around 2 megabytes worth of JSON, which kind of includes things like the textures, all the actual kind of dimensions and other bits and pieces.
Hmm.
So if I really quickly, if I load my script debugger and refresh, we'll have a look really quickly at what happens. So we load our web viewer, open a new window, go off and do it, and
Hmm.
in here we're calling, loading some information from the context around the size of the product, and then in here we're actually then loading a custom function into here, which is loading in our actual kind of product JSON. So if we
Oh,
come down
okay.
here and look at the kind of product
Product
JSON, you
JSON.
can see
Wow,
in
that's
here.
a yeah. That's pages and pages of JSON.
Yeah, this
Oh,
is
so it's
this is
with base 64 encoded stuff too?
Yeah, so it's a combination. You'll see at the top here is a kind of, you might recognize there's an array of items. Inside of here, we've got objects. There's actually the 3D scene. So this is actually a JSON object, which in
Hmm.
here, yeah, this is all base 64 encoded kind of data. So for things like those 3D models, that's coming in as base 64 encoded
Right.
data, bits and pieces like that. And then we'll have some more items and some other kind of bits and pieces down here. We can see actually FileMaker is actually pretty decent at kind of rendering that. If we're there, we've got some of the bits and pieces. It loads it into there, and then it's going to write that out into the actual web viewer and set the kind of HTML content in here. So
So
actually, when we look at what's happening inside of the actual web viewer itself, if we're looking here at the
mhm.
source, we can see we've got a bit of web code in here. And then inside of here is all the data that has been written in by FileMaker. So we might see this particular shape, and it literally goes from moving a line, moving a line, moving a line, extruding it by a particular an
Yeah.
amount, applying a rotation, applying the mesh onto it, the textures,
Yeah.
and all those kind of bits and pieces.
Yeah, it looks like about 3 or 4,000 lines of code. And this is just for one cabinet, right? So you can also visualize
Yes.
an entire kitchen with many of these cabinets, a bunch of different products like refrigerators and stuff like that. Okay, cool. So,
Yeah, absolutely. So what we might look at, this is just running in a web viewer just for kind of
oh
speed, but
yeah, whole room.
a whole room. And actually in here, what we might do is start a floor plan. We're going to draw a room of a particular shape like this, which I'm drawing. Let's
Weird
create a
lines, normal.
Yeah, we can resize this if we need to. And then in our 3D view, we're able then to, you can see the new room I've
Down.
drawn, take our actual kitchen products, drag them around.
Zoom into the tile on the floor. Look, this is cool. So where does the AI part of this come in? I guess we actually just covered the really sweet JSON stuff I was going to talk about later, but um,
Yeah,
so
so at the moment, I haven't found a way to do any cool stuff with this with AI. I'm sure
mhm,
there is some useful stuff to be able to do with it. I think it'd be really cool if you could work out like if things overlap each other. So if there's a problem with the calculations, if something's the wrong
mhm.
size, then giving it a big chunk of something and kind of being able to actually do it from that perspective is that would be quite useful. But actually, the AI part of this, where I kind of started with this was actually on our issue tracker.
Mhm.
So we have an internal issue tracker where our clients raise issues and other bits and pieces.
Mhm.
And actually, what I kind of thought is, okay, we've got an issue here which has been raised. Here's a bug. Here's a bunch of screenshots. Here's some history that's happened across it, and here's some tasks that need to be done.
Right.
And people might want to get an update about what's kind of happening. And if you try and kind of put all of this into an email, there's quite a lot of information, and it's not super clear actually what's happened. So one of the things I did is with just a Chat GTP integration was have this just generate a summary of the issue. So I'm basically taking all of the text, doing sort of looking up the list of the history or whatever, sending it to Chat GTP with a prompt template, and
Mhm.
say, can you give me a summary of what's happened on here? So
Yeah, so
this
that's cool. So it's like all of the interactions with the customer, all of the responses you've had, and then it gives you like a one sentence or a one paragraph summary. The support ticket initiated by admin for the client pertains to new test bug currently in the internal testing. Blah blah. Okay, cool.
yeah, so obviously this is a it's a relatively sort of simple
Yeah,
implementation
it's
where we
pretty
where
pretty straightforward.
we're using kind of Chat GTP. So obviously
Mhm.
it's not the most complex thing, but I can have a quick look at what happens in here. So obviously we kind of go off, get the stored version about the information, and the main thing in here is just this variable in here which just says get a prompt. So if I look
Mhm.
at what the function is in here, it basically says, can you write me a summary of this? And then we've got some fields which are referenced,
Mhm.
and then we've got it in here, and then basically I've got an execute SQL which says, right, well, get me all of the timestamps in here. And kind of because we want it to sort of say activity, who it was by, and details, there's a nice little hack you can do, not really a hack, a function of SQL where you can
Mhm.
kind of insert bits of text in between each of those values. So we can kind of say, right, this bit is the activity, this bit is who it's by, and this bit is the comment to kind
Right.
of to steer the model in terms of what's actually happening. And then we can see, yeah, we can provide a list of all the tasks, and then we can at least provide the sort of the file name and the description of the screenshots. It
Yeah,
probably
this
wouldn't be.
is one page of code
Yeah, exactly. So
with a
this
query.
this took me probably, I don't know, an hour and a half, 2 hours to implement and to
Yeah,
tweak
yeah,
it
yeah.
out and stuff like that. Um, and this actually, obviously, it then kind of goes off, gets the response,
Yeah,
and
normal API response. It sends the whole query with all the data, and then gets a response. Okay, so that's a really I think that's a use that a lot of people are going to find useful. Like, take all this data that I've got and interpret it, summarize it, maybe even say, what's the time frame? What are the things we're missing? Compare this one to other things that we've done, stuff like that. So, are there any other uses you've done so far? And what's next?
yeah. So in there, what that's generating. Sorry,
Hmm.
live trying to do a code demo is never a good never a good
That's
idea.
always
The
fun.
prompt. So yeah, I mean, effectively, what I sort of found, I looked at various different ways of getting the data
Hmm.
in a format that these language models are going to be quite good at kind of responding to, and I sort of found that actually, having these keywords like activity and then the details and things like that
Hmm.
is where I sort of had to kind of tweak it to try and get it to understand what information it's being given so that it can actually sort of summarize that. So
Hmm.
rather than just listing the data, it was actually putting, well, this is a description, this is a status, this is a priority.
Hmm.
And it's actually quite clever in terms of if info is missing, if you say like, release date colon and then a space, it goes, well, we're missing a release date. Maybe that's a piece of information
Right.
we should actually have. Um, so
Hmm.
I sort of started with that, and it was kind of quite good at generating a just a summary, which is what you might expect,
It,
like
it makes me think,
summarize.
it makes me think that that would actually be a pretty cool kind of a dashboard thing at the top level of the project or top level of the, yeah, the customer to say, these are the things that are missing. We usually frequently I'll hard code stuff like that and say, put an alert if this bit of data is missing. But using ChatGPT or using some sort of a LLM integration, you could get a much more meaningful summary of what is going on, what might be going on. How do you consume that summary? Who's the target audience for that summarized text?
So in this, the primary idea for this is an update email to say this is what
Mm,
this is what's happening. So we can say whenever something changes on an issue, create a kind of short summary. So I have like an email update which is formatted and says here's the bug, blah 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 blah. But they end up being really quite long, and you have to there's not really an automated way to say, well, actually, the most recent pieces of information are the most interesting ones. The stuff that happened a certain amount of time ago is not as is not as useful. So actually being able to do that. So as a short little snippet that you can see, right, those issues that I have assigned to me, or those issues that I've raised. Here's an update about what has happened and what sort of has the
that's
latest
cool.
activity kind of on there.
That's
So that
super
was the
cool.
very kind of first thing I got into.
Hmm.
Then I sort of thought, well, actually, that would be quite useful at an order level. So that's a task with issues and other bits and pieces. So this is all sort of sample data, so it's all sort of says test and other bits and pieces
Sure.
like that. But actually, on an order, so this is one of the orders we have in our system, we might have
Yeah, normal stuff, line items,
a bunch
products,
of line items. We might
estimated
have
delivery,
a bunch of files
attachment
attached.
files.
We
Sure.
have some tasks that need doing. We've got some billing, other bits and pieces. We've got various sort of tasks that kind of happen in here.
Yeah,
And
quite
actually
involved.
being
There's
able
like 8 tabs right there. Yeah.
yeah, there's a
Okay.
whole load, and these may or may not, because as a vertical market solution, all our customers use this in quite a different way. They've got loads of different options, and their
Oh
products
yeah.
are very, very different, and their billing templates are different. So everything, it then becomes very, very hard to custom code anything for any one customer because you
Right.
can't put the business logic into the system because otherwise it doesn't work from one company to another company, which is where
Right.
I think AI is great because it can actually take that information you give it, and rather than having to say, right, well, if one task is late, do something else. If these three things, then that's important, and if not, that's important from there.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So really kind of analysis of the status.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
order insights. That's the feature that we're talking about here.
yeah. So I've sort of kind of named it order insights, as that's
Mhm.
kind of is it sort of just sort of tell me what's happening with that order? Are there any issues? Is anything that's kind of late? So in here, I'm kind of sending a bigger payload of data to the to kind of chat GTP
Yeah.
because there's more things involved in the order, and that takes a little bit of while, a little bit of time for that to be submitted
Yeah.
and then kind of brought back.
I know Chris would ask like the token size, like how close are you to the limits of what GPT can do? And there's of course other models that handle like 1 million. Uh, I don't know if you know that
Yeah,
information.
because the more information you send, it takes a little longer to get that response back,
Well, it
and
also
also
has a ceiling. It can only take a certain amount of data
yeah,
right now.
yeah, absolutely, and on an order in our system, we might have maybe 30,000 records across different tables. So
Right.
you can't really currently it's not easy to send just all of that information. So you have to be a bit kind of clever about what stuff you take out, and you only send it stuff that may be relevant, because
Yeah.
if you send it
Well, yeah, let me summarize this for people listening. So it comes up with some bullet points, right? Based on the provided information for the order, these are the data inconsistencies. Scheduled completion date for the order and the delivery date are both in the past. Manufacturer process scheduling, all manufacturing processes have started. And so that's like something that's good. Completion status processes are marked as late with a completion percentage of 0%. Order status versus progress. This is really deep, you know.
Yeah, this and it's what I found with the ChatGTP 4 model over the maybe 3.5 version is
Yeah,
that the 3.5 would sort of say this is missing a date, that is here, and it was a bit
yeah,
more. It was a bit more parroting back what you told it, whereas this is a bit more actual insightful because it's sort of saying, well, actually, there's no indication that anything's happened. You know, this order, even though the overall completion is at 5%, but
hmm,
none of the tasks are completed. So something is wrong there, and it's kind of right in that, yeah, something is wrong. Actually, if I look at my, it thinks my order is 5.4%, but actually nothing
right.
has been done
Yeah, yeah, yeah. How many years of development do you have in this?
in the overall system.
Yeah,
System is probably 7 years old, I would say. I think we've sort of
yeah,
had it in market sort of 4. So as a result, it's quite big. There's quite a
yeah,
lot of
for
kind of
sure.
stuff in there. But actually be able to get in there, and actually the fact it comes back and it sort of seems daft, but this is markdown, so it comes down with like a bullet pointed list
Oh,
and a
sure.
bold thing and bits and pieces in here,
Hmm.
and it just makes it really nice and really simple to kind of actually highlight that kind of information because
Yeah,
actually one of the things I want to do next with it, and that works great for an individual order, is then say, well, actually, given all of those order summaries, which ones need the most attention? Give me the top
right.
three that have something wrong. So taking that individual, kind of issue, feeding that in, and then saying, right, you know what, I'm the production manager, I'm the CEO, I want to see a dashboard, right? What stuff needs my attention first? And I think that's a kind of a way of using multiple steps to kind of get a whole load of information that's too much for one human to look at
Yeah,
down to a snapshot and picking things that that's inconsistent, that's not right, but then actually tell me overall which of my orders are going to cause me a problem because they're massively overlaid or something
right.
like
Yeah, I could see that. I could see the huge value that this would give to your customers.
that. Yeah,
And then you
absolutely.
can have them just like have it just all run on like at night or whatever. They can just run. I would guess that do they have their own API key or do they share yours and you bill them for it or
Yeah, so at the moment they use ours, but there's also the kind of the commercial aspect of it, which is obviously every query you do to OpenAI costs an
Mhm.
amount of money. For these of this sort of size, that it's maybe 4 pence, around maybe 6 cents in terms of US dollars,
Mhm.
which isn't that much individually. But if you've got 500 orders on a system and you want to run those every single day, all of a sudden that starts adding up to actually a significant amount
Right,
of actual cost for that. And
right.
obviously, for the customers, they need to see the return on investment. They sort of, you can either eat that cost yourself as a supplier and say, well, as part of the overall system,
Yeah.
but someone could sit there and press that refresh button,
Oh yeah, 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 exactly. Of course, you
five
could have an
five
AI
hundred
algorithm to
times.
say, "Hey, have it tuned to not spend a certain too much money." That's a
Yeah,
whole
yeah,
next
exactly.
level
So
meta stuff.
it's yeah, it is one of those things, and obviously with the context window, the more data you're sending, the more expensive each of those calls are. If it's a short
Right.
one, if it's a few sentences, then it's not that many. It's not that many tokens. It's not that many tokens forwards and backwards. But
Yeah.
I think there's almost a line where using like an off the shelf model, like ChatGTP, is probably the more expensive way of doing it.
Yeah.
Probably using an open source one and training it yourself a little bit more would be better for scale, I think.
Yeah. And then running like your own AWS server to process all that for all the clients kind of a thing. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And then being able to train that model yourself based on, well, actually, most of our clients, there's a whole load of that model. 99.999% of the information in there is not relevant to us at all. So we
Right. Right.
don't really, there's no value to us, being able to ask what the sports result is for something.
Well,
Or
yeah, but I mean, like Chris talks about, it's you don't ask ChatGPT for the fast facts about your data. You're using the engine to process um, and put it in language that's clear and to be able to know what to summarize. But all of the facts are in your data, so it's
yeah,
only looking at that. It's not looking at sports scores and other stuff like that for to know what is true. So
absolutely. Because I think where I'm at is I sort of feel like I'm just dipping my toe in the pond a little bit
mhm,
with this.
mhm.
Like these are probably some of the maybe simpler things to do in terms of doing a an insight to say, right, of this data, what's kind of important. Obviously,
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing I
there's a
really
whole
see
layer
with
underneath
this
that.
is going to be super useful to like so many people to do that level of stuff and such great utility uh to
Yeah,
solutions.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, and all that kind of vectorized search. As soon as we're able to look at actually, well, these tasks and these queries, and being able
Mhm.
to do that inside of FileMaker. Obviously, sort of at the moment, the tools I've found within FileMaker to make it work are, execute SQL is quite good because I
Yeah,
don't have to write a custom script to go off to layout one and do this, layout two and do
yeah.
that, layout three and do that. Also, what I've done is those prompt templates are customer specific. So I've had to put in a load of, the commands at the front that says it doesn't matter if this happens at the same time as this. It's not a problem that the tasks happen before this, because otherwise what it comes back is it doesn't really have a lot of context sort of for that. And they're obviously specific per customer. So it's kind of, there's a bit of prompt engineering in there per customer to make the queries kind of return information that actually would be something they would be concerned about, and that's that kind of tweaking per kind of customer. And obviously,
Mhm.
FileMaker is great for that in terms of being able to have a bunch of text in a field which gets evaluated as a calculation, and then you can say, right, well, actually, this customer doesn't use this part of the system, so let's just not ever pass that to it, because then we won't get any information back about that. and,
Right.
and that which allows you to then sort of get that signal to noise level at the right level where it's providing a useful kind of amount of information to the customer, but it's not telling them stuff they don't want to know about.
Yeah, yeah, cool.
Yeah, it's and it's also one of the things I found is it's quite difficult to make it say there's no problems
Mhm.
because you're saying what are
What
the
are the
issues, if
problems? Yeah.
any,
You'll just find
with.
smaller and smaller as it gets better. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, because my first thought was, oh, you can keep on doing it until it says there's no issues.
Mhm.
Great, that's going to work. And that was a kind of, when I'd initially pitched it with the clients and we
Mhm.
talked about it, it was like, oh yeah, it'll highlight issues until there's none left.
Mhm.
Which is why I sort of pivoted it to talking about insights rather than maybe issues, because actually it's
Right.
going to say if nothing's late, it will say, well, this process is currently on time, but it might be late in the
Yeah.
future, because
Yeah.
it's looking for something to return. It's
Yeah,
kind
yeah,
of,
yeah.
and I think
Got it.
that's kind of almost something we need to do on our side with the FileMaker thing is, if you keep asking it questions, it's always going to provide you an answer.
Yeah. So you have to sort of train it on what's important and what's less important for
Yeah,
issues that are going on. So it can like highlight things in red, like, a really, really key date was missed or something like that.
yeah.
I also love the idea of like summarizing this and using it for emails. It's pretty sweet. So what's next? What are your next areas that you think are going to be using it for?
Yeah, so one of the things I want to kind of really get to is, for us, setting up product catalogs is very time consuming and a very kind of, laborious processes. If you think about, a manufacturer may sell 500 types of cabinet that are all
Hmm.
slightly different, and we need to work out all the information for what's the calculation for what size they are. And with a lot of companies, you sort of, as you probably know, you go in, you say, right, well, what products do you sell? And they go, oh, we've got these 100. Okay, great,
Yeah.
yeah, we'll do those. And then you sort of go, and then they come back in about 6 months later, they go, oh, well, actually, there's this other spreadsheet over here that's got a whole load of stuff that we didn't really think about.
Yeah.
And actually being able to tailor those tools to actually saying, well, here's what we need to get into our system to get it kind of configured, but actually using the AI on that side of it, I think is where there's going to be a huge amount of power, because we can sort
Hmm.
of say, well,
Yeah.
here's the information we have, and here's an example of what one product and the data should look like,
Yeah.
once
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
converted.
So
Yeah,
if I understand this, it's like taking a look at vendor data, right? So like for your
yeah,
customers, uh, who are building these custom kitchens, if you will, um, they have many different vendors who sell different things.
mhm,
So eight of them might have, high-end refrigerators. Three of them might have a really good tile. Six of them might make cabinets, blah, blah, blah. So you could use an AI engine to sort of collate and compare all of those things together and recommend a set of them that's the ideal set for what would work for a project. Is that what I'm?
yeah, yeah, kind of like that, where you're looking
Mhm.
at here's what they sell, but a lot of it is working out the calculations, because a lot of our system is about working out what is the height, width, and depth of every single
Mm.
bit that needs to be cut for this, which can be tens of thousands of individual pieces for a kitchen,
Oh yeah.
which across lots of orders, and all of those have to be kind of correct. And at the moment, there's not really a way other than having someone with a big spreadsheet to go through and check that they're all.
Hmm.
You're not going to make them and go and measure them and go,
Yeah, yeah,
did
yeah,
these turn out the right size?
yeah.
So it's almost generating those calculations to say, this piece is the height minus this bit or whatever, and you can sort of generalize
Right.
those across those, and actually generating that information, because it's quite structured and you can see it should end up like this, and look across all of these and tell me anything, because if one component is 10,000 times bigger than all the other ones, a human has to look through and see every number,
Right.
whereas a model could look and say, well, actually, these are all 1 centimeter to 100 centimeters. If one of them
Right.
is 15,000 centimeters, that's probably something that
Yeah.
it might
Yeah.
be right, but maybe flag that up to kind of have a look
Yeah,
at.
exactly. Yeah.
And again,
Um,
that's not the sort of thing that is very easy to write a search for, because it's kind of,
exactly.
there's so
And I
much
mean, if you
contextual
have a
information.
visual, like, I mean, you have the visual representation, but as you were saying earlier, like knowing if there's going to be overlap, and there's a lot of other details that are going to be really, really hard. So I've am working on a vertical market, and a ton of the stuff that we want to do are exactly kind of the things that you're wanting to do. And also there's some stuff that you're already doing that I definitely want to be doing. Um, so that's how I know for sure that there's a lot of utility in this for
Mm.
many solutions out there. Um, that's really cool. It's really cool.
Yeah, because I think for most systems, I think if you're building a one-off solution
Hmm.
for a customer, and they tell you here's what we've got, and you have to tailor it to their business logic, and a lot of companies will take an off-the-shelf product that they have and tweak it kind of for them, and I think the requirements for vertical market are kind of so different, in that because so many organizations work in different ways, and you're not going to change every company in the world to work the way your system works.
Yeah.
You need to make it flexible, and the downside of making it flexible is you then have to have so much business logic in the system as data, rather than just in a script, or this is what happens when an invoice is sent, it needs to be chased in 30 days, and if it's more than 60, it's late or whatever.
Right.
And that is always a big issue, is that onboarding of how you get that client's business logic into the system, or you get it configured to behave the way that they want it to do. And I imagine this is the same across other vertical market solutions. Is
Mhm.
actually the hard part is always kind of getting people over the line, and having that work to get it set up, because
Mhm.
if your data in there isn't right, or it doesn't work the way you need it to, then there's pushback, and people go, oh well, we'll stick with our spreadsheets that we
Yeah.
have and we
Yeah.
know.
Exactly. The devil you know.
Yeah, yeah. Or we're using Monday.com and it doesn't work, and it's
Right.
50 million things in there, and it's kind of like that. But I think that onboarding process is something where, yeah, that's where there would be some real value, not just in the solution itself to do that with the client, but
Right.
actually as an organization, as an SBA FileMaker kind of reseller, then
Hmm.
how good an experience we can provide to the customer, how we can onboard them, is a really key thing. And I think for the success of the platform, that's on us to try and make sure that we're making FileMaker look good and making it actually that people that's a solution people want to use, even if they don't know it's FileMaker.
Right.
Making sure that is smooth and easy for them. That's so kind of key.
Yeah. And then you're deploying this all with FileMaker client, right? There's no web direct.
Yeah, at the moment, yeah, the system does work in WebDirect, but we tend to push them towards kind of desktop. A lot of FileMaker Go, so we do iPads and
Mm,
iPhones for scanning in the warehouse and
mhm.
other bits and pieces like that. But
Right.
yeah, I think the kind of full fat FileMaker is
Uh-huh.
it's the best.
Yeah.
It's the most richest kind of version of it,
Yeah.
isn't it? Um, yeah, it's kind of
If the
that's
server's, local, I mean, this would be really rough on a WAN, I'm guessing, or maybe not.
um it depends really. It depends how you architect it. So we do a lot of perform script on server.
Hmm.
So of a lot of that stuff that are sort of shown, that's all running on a server. For me, my dev server is
Hmm.
Ireland or somewhere. I think it is. It's it's not super local,
Hmm.
but as a result, because a lot of customers, if they're in a warehouse somewhere in the UK, all the industrial sites seem to have terrible internet connection. So you have to offload a lot of as much stuff as you can do to
Yeah.
happen on the server and be able to kind of come back.
Yep.
Um,
Okay.
which is which is where I think a lot of the recent stuff like perform script on server with callback, like that's been
Yeah.
great. We've implemented that. We had some stuff where people had to wait for a big import to happen, whereas now the import can happen, and then if they're on that layout and that import is finished, you update to say here's now your newfound set of all
Hmm.
the products that have
And do
been
you have any,
imported.
I'm just curious, with the callback thing, I've always wondered, like, what happens if the user leaves, goes to another layout, there's another big script that's running, and what happens to that callback script when it gets called? That's, and I know that there's, going to be some solutions to that, but is that something you've encountered?
Yeah, you just have to check the context, which is which is always the way, isn't it? So the
Mhm.
way I do it is basically you kind of check when the script is triggered, you send some context information about where that was called from, and then when you get that back from the from the customer, you
Mhm.
only that you check the context. They're not in that context, then doesn't matter. You don't need to update it. But if they are, if they're on an order detail page and they've imported a load of products, then yeah, update their kind of found set. Because we have one customer that makes fire doors, and we thought, oh, this great fire doors. A door is a bit like a part of a kitchen. Every cabinet has a door. How
Mhm.
hard can it be to make fire
Mhm.
doors? And
Mhm.
it turns out that every single product has 200 options, about 220 odd individual things that can be one of a number of values that are
Wow.
set.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, what an order might be for a hospital, 1,500 doors, and each of these have 200 options, which all determine what
Right.
happens and the acoustic rating, the fire rating, the hygiene rating, the
Right.
what size and location the glass panels are, and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
So we have a customer who's regularly importing orders of 1,500 doors, each with 200 parameters. That's where
Whoa.
having them sit there in FileMaker and wait
Yeah.
is a long time.
Yeah.
Goes off on the server, comes back, lets them know once it's done. That's one of those use cases for
Yeah.
perform script
Yeah.
on
For
server
sure.
with callback. And in those instances, we're making 100,000 records for one particular order, which
Yeah. Which server side is fast, right? Minute,
it could be
something like
faster,
that.
but it's definitely faster
Yeah.
than
Yeah.
doing it client side.
Yeah. Yeah. Night and day.
I remember we were talking about the backwards and forwards hopping about when a new record is created, weren't we, when we spoke last time? It's
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, like at one of the conferences, I was asking Clay, like, what is the process that happens? Is it just one call? And it's not. It's like three, four, or something like that to create a record.
Yeah, to say here's some you can make. Here's some info you can make a record. Okay, now I've created that record. Just want to double check what's that record. I'm making sure
Right.
that, yeah, both,
Right. It's like, okay, now the record is made. Send me the information.
yeah,
So lock, write. Yeah, there's a lot. And on a WAN, if you've got significant uh, latency, that's a long time.
yeah,
And if you're making
exactly.
10,000 records or 100 records, it's a really, really long time. So these are this kind of basic operations, uh, I think are a little bit rough in FileMaker. But on the other hand, if you do a search, right? If you're on a layout with, I don't know, a million records in it, and you do a search that yields a result of 50, that happens instantaneously, even on a WAN connected. It's very,
Yeah,
very fast.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's kind of knowing. It's knowing through war wounds what's fast and what's slow, isn't it? I've done this before, and it's
yeah, yeah,
caused me
yeah.
issues.
That's true. So I don't know. One of the things I've always tried to do is find out what things are fast and then use those as much as I can. Don't fight it, but use the things that work really, really well, and then the things that don't, use PSOS. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the amazing things about FileMaker is that if you stay with what it's good at, it is fantastic. Like you can
Hmm.
do
Hmm.
lots of stuff. The reason in our system why I do a lot of stuff in web viewers is because it's doing things that are not really well suited to FileMaker, like
Yeah.
data tables where you got lots of columns and then they may be different sizes and they
Hmm.
may or may not be there, and you can do filter, you can do sorting and other bits and pieces like that. Is I found, well, actually I'm just gonna do an execute SQL to FileMaker, get the whole set of records with all the data in
Hmm.
a just a two-dimensional array. So one
Hmm.
array per order, and then inside of there, just each element, not even a JSON object where they're named, but if you just know the first element of the array is this, the second is this, the third is
Hmm.
that,
Hmm.
then that is really fast from FileMaker. You can get that, you can get the whole, pretty much the whole table very, very fast. And then actually the JavaScript in the web viewer can sort that by 15 criteria and summarize that absolutely
Exactly.
instantaneously.
Yeah. Yeah. So JavaScript speed is a whole different beast.
Yeah, and also where it's just like, well, as I make the window larger, I'd like these columns
To
to all
smoothly
expand.
grow. Yeah.
How lovely would that be in FileMaker? But
I know.
it's not there, so we use the web viewer to do that, to do that type of stuff,
Yep.
and and people sort of, I think, will go down the line of, oh, why don't you just make everything in JavaScript? And it's like, well, have you tried doing that? It's there's quite a lot of things you get for free in FileMaker
Yeah.
where you kind of have to, yeah, work very hard in other platforms. It makes the layout very quick and easy, but other things become very, very, very difficult, don't they?
Cool. This is good stuff. I'm gonna want to check in with you again when you get more things done. But thank you so much for coming on and showing all these amazing things. I
Uh,
hope people found
oh,
this
great. Well,
useful.
thanks for having me on, Matt. Yeah, it's been great to kind of talk to you about it. And yeah, it's been interesting. Actually, I think I would hold you probably personally responsible for me putting a kind of AI into the system, because we had conversations about it
Yeah.
back in September, October.
Yeah.
In
Yeah.
the past, I was sort of aware of it, but I'd sort of discounted it a bit. I was like, well, I'm not quite sure it would work for
Mm,
that. But actually, from that, it goes in the back of your head, and then you have a quiet afternoon one
yeah.
time. You think,
It's
I
like,
wonder if I could just implement this. I'll have a go at
So
doing that.
one of the things I think about a lot is like, uh, is is AI a solution looking for a problem, right? And that's not what you did, right? You totally had a problem that you couldn't solve any other way, and you used AI to solve it in a really, really nice, useful way that's very meaningful to the customer. So yeah, that's what I'm really, really hoping to see. I'm hoping to do kind of more of these episodes between the conversations with Cris to talk about some real world examples of things. All right, Gabriel, thanks for your time.
Brilliant. Great to speak to you, Matt.